Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Marc et mon ami qui se présente, il s'appelle Robert Bavester ou Bobochon, c'est son pseudonyme. Voici un nouveau podcast de Skinny Air Media euh, qui nous parlons le sujet du cinéma français. If you could understand what I just said en anglais, I'll give you £20.
How much is that in euros? About 22, isn't it?
About 23, 24. Let's say
probably about,
€23.
probably about 200. It'll be about something like 200 of the old French francs, but they haven't used that in years. Right.
I
Where was I
remember
going?
the franc.
Same
but
here.
yeah, for a lot of our younger viewers who grew up on a life post-Brexit, post-Euro, they probably will be like, huh? But to each his own, I suppose. But I'll say in English for everyone who's out there, because as you well know, English people don't speak other languages unless you are an immigrant yourself. We're going to be talking about French cinema.
I
And
think a lot
yes,
of French. I think a lot of Canadians might speak French as well. I mean, as in like obviously the French Canadians, but I think the rest of the Canadians that didn't grow up in Quebec might also know French as well. Just I think basically everyone in Canada is basically bilingual between French and English.
I'm actually sorry to tell you, but I've talked to people from Vancouver and Edmonton, and they tell me that their French is quite rudimentary. They may know like the bonjour and je m'appelle, and yeah, they have to be taught it in schools. It's mandatory, unlike in other Anglophone countries, but it sort of goes away if you don't have a lot of exposure. So it's a bit like the Cambrai issue, where you're required to learn Welsh in schools, but when you get out there in the working world, you might not speak it that much. If your job requires you to learn English, or you're about around a bunch of English people.
Well, I mean, well, okay, fair enough. Fair enough then. Yeah, I was to say myself, bonjour, je m'appelle Rob. Oh, tout le monde, and that's probably extent. I could probably speak a bit more French than that, but I haven't studied it since GCSE level and only got a C, so I mean, might be close to a B, but yeah, I was probably can't remember too much about it. I tried watching. So yeah, I'll let you start the podcast anyways. You've probably got a bit more experience with this today's topic, which I don't think you've introduced specifically said what it is yet, Mark.
Well, from what we've hinted at earlier on, because I said it en français, we will talk about French cinema or francophone titles in general. Now, this has been one I've been sort of intrigued to do for a while, but I wasn't so sure about doing, particularly because I was going to do this particular podcast en français with someone who was from France, just to make it authentic. But I guess for continuity purposes, probably best just to do it in English. I'm sure les bobos, which are French hipsters, will understand at least some of what we're saying. So we won't try to use too much slang, and I'll insert French words here and there just to make it easier for sort of l'objectif de traduction. So, the première question. What was your first experience with cinéma français?
And I was always start this one. I had a feeling you, and as I predicted, you would initiate with this line of questioning. Well, I mean, as I was, may have mentioned, I'm gonna have to go with the Asterix movies, the animated Asterix movies, as I was introduced to them at quite a young age, and I've read most, if not all, the Asterix comics. So yeah, although I was not, they were in an English dub, but they're French, so that would be the first stuff I got introduced to. The first French media would have been introduced to, and yeah, I really enjoy it. well, I mean, I've been a big fan of Asterix ever since I first uh, encountered it, and in fact, I've even said Asterix is my top 5 favorite comic book characters. For if those of you who want to know the rest, because you're that sad, the other 4 are Spider-Man, Batman, Judge Dredd, and Deadpool.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, that's my first introduction.
hey, I think that's a perfect one at that. From my experience with Anglophones, they're not quite invested in sort of what that I've heard over there. They call it Franco-Belge BD. BD is bande dessin, which means a comic book or graphic novel, and it's very much a strong industry over there. But the ones that have been quite popular in the Anglophone universe actually is Le Schtroumpf, which, yes, it is Belgium, or het is Belgisch, but the thing is, a lot of sort of the Belgian Franco-Belge comic books are usually made by people of sort of francophone origin, like they're from Wallon or Wallonie, and those are the ones that are quite famous, like Tintin, Asterix et Obelix, and Les Schtroumpfs or the Smurfs. So I
Yeah,
kind of get you on there.
I watched the Smurfs. I think I watched Smurfs a bit as a kid. Obviously, I watched Tintin as well. But when you first asked about France, French, just think of actual stuff from Le France, from the the Fifth French Republic, or well, fourth, could have been fourth. I don't know. Well, anyway, like the Republic of France, and not from outside. So of course, Smurfs and Tintin are of course both technically officially Belgian. So I didn't necessarily count them, but I did watch Tintin quite a lot growing up as well, and I really enjoyed that TV series, mainly because unlike most cartoons at the time, it didn't patronize you. It actually allowed people to be killed and everything, and wasn't afraid to pull punches, and it was slightly grounded in realism, which could be more than said for most cartoons like Ninja Turtles or Biker Mice from Mars. But that's getting off. But nonetheless, yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously, it was stuff like that that got me that introduced me to French stuff.
Well, from my experience, because your one actually sounds more involved than I expected, but my ones are also quite involved as well. Now, it's a bit of an unusual one because I grew up on Asterix et Obelix and Tintin mainly through sort of indirectly because there was a part that I think was an Efteling. It was quite called Park Asterix, which I remember going to when I was quite a young lad. And I think at the time they were still using, not so sure if it was guilders, and it was in French-speaking Belgium or Flanders, and I had quite a lot of fun there as well. And then Tintin, they showed a few episodes of that. I think it was on BBC. I didn't quite understand what it was all about, but I thought it was interesting. But my biggest introduction to le dessin animé français actually is Augie et le Cafard, or Augie and the Cockroaches, and Les Triplets de Belleville, which for you Anglophones, it is known as Belleville Rendezvous. It is a 12 certificate animation that I remember getting excited for, and I for some reason never got to see it at the cinema because it wasn't playing anywhere. Even though I really wanted to, because it was a 12A certificate cartoon. And the only reason why I got it was because it showed a cartoon woman's breasts and it was jiggling around. There was a bit of sexualization, but because it was more or less artistic, it sort of flew past the radar, at least in my brain. It wasn't some sort of like, for like me, anime, where it has a bit more of a pervy streak to it. So that was for me.
Oh,
And then later on, I would go into stuff like Micmac, Attilaïgo, Délicatessen, Banlieue très, Intouchable, Samba, and all the rest. But we'll talk about those later.
I just suddenly remembered. You asked me about stuff, French stuff I watched when I was a kid as well. On top of all those, I also, because you're suddenly talk about French cartoons aimed at kids. Just so reminded me one I watched back in the 90s, which I absolutely loved because it was so funky and out there. Botsmaster. I don't know if you've even heard of it.
I have never heard of Botsmaster.
Yeah,
I've
it's
heard
called
of
Botsmaster.
Inspector Gadget.
Yeah, I watched that quite a bit as well. Was that actually French? No, it was, wasn't it?
It's a Quebec French co-production.
Yeah. My parents always thought Pink Panther was French as well, but it's not. But no, Botsmaster was a French cartoon. I think in France it's known as Le Maître de Bots. Can't remember. Basically, it's set in some sort of a dystopian future where like robots just everywhere, and this guy named Zed Zoolander and his little sister are leading this typical robot resistance against this what's his name, Dr. Hiss, I think his name was, and his oppressive regime. Typical standard fare stuff. It did have one of the funkiest theme tunes ever. I swear, if you get a chance to on YouTube, just type in Botsmaster theme tune and just enjoy, because it's like, this is the kind of stuff that 90s kids just watched in their afternoons after school for entertainment. It was no wonder they're all so weird. Because again, like most stuff I watched growing up, it is funky as shit. Pretty goofy, but then again, what kids stuff isn't?
No, I mean, I was a big fan of the theme song to Inspector Gadget, which just shows
Who
you
isn't?
the French got a few sort of musical tricks up their sleeve, and Augier le Cafard was one I would like to sort of imitate a lot. And then also Les Zinzins de l'Espace, which you probably know as Home to Rent or Space Goofs. For some
I
reason,
don't
they
think I've
used
seen
to,
that one.
well, it had Iggy Pop's song, weirdly enough, in the soundtrack. Na, 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 we are monster men. Come on, say it with me, kids. It was a bit weird because I wouldn't expect a kids' cartoon to have an Iggy Pop song, but there you go. My experience with French animation is a little bit unusual because unlike American or Japanese ones, it was a bit here or there, sort of a bit of a jumpy experience. Because a lot of those ones that I did see were mostly they aired on Fox Kids, which became Jetix, and there was a few of them that aired on like on Nickelodeon and stuff. I think Cartoon Network. So there was always some sort of interesting aspect about it. And you could always tell it was Français because of the names on the titles, and it always say CINÉMA, which means Centre National des Cinématographes et de l'Image Animée, on the credits. It would always make me laugh, thinking like, "Oh, je suis très culturé pour les gens, pour l'Angleterre." But that's another side on point. But yes, my favorite French animation will and always be Les Triplets de Belleville. For some reason, I never owned it on DVD, even though I've seen it countless number of times. But take it as you will. I know a lot of, weirdly enough, in the modern day, there are a lot of titres français that are actually quite popular amongst Anglophones, but you wouldn't know it, like Miraculous, Les Aventures de Chat Noir et Ladybug. Have you seen all the toys? It's like a dark-haired girl with like a mask on. Looks like Violet from The Incredibles. I keep seeing it everywhere. Little girls are
Uh,
obsessed with it.
I don't think I actually have. I mean,
Or even
I'm
worse,
just
sorry, those yellow things that mignon. They're français and they're annoying. You see them everywhere. Those
yeah.
mignons. They're actually français.
I mean, that they're actually French, because it says that they're all completely, the whole Gru and Despicable Me is all completely American.
Well, produced with Yankee money, but animated with frog money. I'm sorry, animated in Frogland.
Right. I've just suddenly found out another one of my favorite cartoons from a kid, Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars, was partly French as well. I mean, I know this is kind of like stretching the definition of French stuff to to a level. But yeah, I know Botsmaster was a French one, but just dubbed into English. I'm just currently, as we're looking at this, going through French animated children's TV series on Wikipedia just to have a sort of get an idea of what else they've done, because I've heard a few French TV series have gone to America and they've had to like face local censorship challenges because they're like have a more lax attitude towards nudity, which the Americans just don't.
Nope, that happened. I mean, Oggy and Le Cafard, or Oggy and the Cockroaches, got in a bit of trouble when it aired on Nickelodeon US because there was a brief still image of a woman's breasts, or like a cat. You could see their téton or sein. That didn't flow too kindly, and subsequent areas
Yeah,
of that episode have been censored.
I think it was that. What was it called again?
Oggy and the Cockroaches.
Oh, Oggy. Oh, right. No, sorry. I think no, it might have been that one actually. I just
It's
remember reading about it on
fairly
an episode
new.
edition. I remember reading about an edition of Cracked, but I just couldn't remember what it was called. But it might be that one. I don't know.
But
Yeah.
you are right, because quite a few of them have been truncated or bowdlerized for Anglophones. I know there was a show called T-Turf, which they call Two-Turf in UK. Oh, quel dommage, tant pis. And that actually was quite a frank BD or dessin animé that had a kid talking about sex a lot. And it got a 12 certificate on DVD, weirdly enough, but you wouldn't know it because it aired on Cartoon Network, I think, like back in 05 or 6 or something. They had to remove a lot of sort of sexual banter just to make it more appropriate. So yeah, it's a values dissonance, so I get what you're coming from.
Well, yeah, I hear about that. I mean, just like, well, I suppose it could be a reverse of just how the Ninja Turtles having to be hero turtles over in Britain, but I think that was just basically us going for a weird phase. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's most of my introduction was through the kids stuff. I'm just trying to think what else. Obviously, I've got quite a lot of French movies in my DVD collection. I mean, I've seen quite a few French films. I mean, I went through a francophilic phase in the past. I kind of still am now, but yeah, I was trying to like buy loads of French movies and watch them subtitled so I could see if I could pick it up. I kind of did, but not too much. Like I learned how to say désolé for sorry, and I learned this phrase putain, which technically means whore, but can be used as a general exclamation like shit or fuck. I've yeah. So I've watched a bit of that stuff. Of course, I remember one French film I discovered during my adolescent era. Emmanuel.
Oh, you pervy bastard. Oh, toi, connard, espèce de pervers.
Yeah, okay. Maybe stop showing off with the whole francophony and
They
yeah,
appreciate being mocked, but I'll tone it down a little bit. But yes, because when it came to the BBFC, they had to censor a fair bit of it, particularly during a scene of rape. I don't know what version you saw, if it was the cut or censored one.
I
Uncut.
doubt I saw the uncut version, although I may have. I mean, you don't know if you saw the uncut version because you don't know what was cut out. You don't know if you. I mean, you need to see both cut and uncut to really know. I mean, if all you saw was a cut version, that's all you're going to be. That's all you're going to know about. Yeah, so I don't know, but it did show a lot more nudity than I was used to in most of these erotic films. Because most erotic films, when I was usually on Channel 5 and I would stay up late to watch or whatever, would just show titties and everything. Of course, they never show anything below the waist. Oh boy, this one did. Of course, I was 14 when I first saw it. I reckon I first saw it on Channel 5, yeah, Channel 5, I think, on the night of a millennium, which suddenly came back, and yeah, just watched it, and well, Well, I mean, a 14-year-old boy seeing a film like that, you do the math.
I'll put two and two together equals four, and yeah, you're not alone. I remember, as I told you in the past, I've seen certain anime well below I was 15 or 18. That's all I'm going to tell you. But yes, well, in my eyes, maybe I'm a bit conservative on this, but I always view that kind of movie as pornography because it was appealed to the sort of kind of people who wanted to see stuff like Deep Throat and Behind the Green Door. So that was the popular things at the time in the 70s, and it was X-rated, marking it to that sort of crowd who wanted to see it, for the. You can never air something like Emmanuel. Um, Probably even now, you certainly can't hear it on US TV. And that's despite the fact that back in the day, HBO used to show pornographic type movies, although softcore variety. But I guess with the full frontal aspect, it's viewed as more or less natural state. And I'm sure the lady in question had a lot of pubic hair.
Not quite a fair bit. Well, it was 70s.
Oh yes. Well, I'm just saying. Okay, maybe I'll just go on a bit of a rant. Maybe that was a little bit random. But if you're talking about more or less sexually charged, sexually explicit French films, there is a film that came out recently. Well, let's just say since 2015, 2016, called Love. Gaspar Noé, the guy who done Enter the Void and Irreversible. Wow. And weirdly enough, despite all the controversy about the unsimulated sex, which you normally see in the R18 work or in 18 work, if it's exceptionally justified by context, no one really complained about it. And many people watched it on Netflix, from what I was told. I even saw it on Netflix when I was abroad.
I don't think I've seen it. I mean, what I have seen is Blue is the Warmest Color.
I know that one, ooh, because of the NC-17 and also the allegations of sexual harassment and exploitation on the set because he was lingering way too much on Derek Sakopoulos and Lea Seydoux' naked bodies.
Yeah, it did
Oh.
but in its home country of France, got a 12.
No, it is true. Interdit en moins de 12 ans, which, on fairness, is a bit unusual looking from the outside because we just would never permit something like that low. But at the same time, the film did get some controversy with social Catholic group called Promouvoir, and they have annulled its visa to be played into cinemas. So legally speaking, recent years, you cannot show the film in French cinemas unless it's been submitted again for reclassification. That's happened to Antichrist as well.
Yeah, it's really bizarre because I don't know why the hell like the pissing and moanings of a bunch of religious groups would bother them so much in France. France, much like America, in fact, even more so, has a very rigid separation of church and state. And unlike America, France tends to keep that because France is a very, very secular society, much like most of Europe. I mean, and the law on separate church state is rigid in France. I mean, public servants can't openly express uh, uh, religious affiliations. I mean, they're not allowed to display religious symbols or anything like that. And of course, half the reason for that is to keep uh, religious institutions or religious organizations out of they're out of film and out of art, just so we can't censor stuff essentially.
That is, like you said, it is one of the great ironies. But from my experience, because I've visited probably France a little bit more than you have, it is changing. I know some of it's probably because of the Islam question, because France has a large population of people from Algeria and Morocco who practice the Islamic faith, and there's a lot of tensions between them and white French Catholics. And even if you took the racial and religious tensions aside, there's also that question of even though France says they are très séculaire, they have many jours fériés or holidays that are based on the Catholic Christian calendar, like Assomption, Pentecost, Noel, Christmas, Pâques, Easter. So, and then a lot of the towns and cities are based off the saints.
Yeah, well, true. I mean, that's just. I'm aware of that. I mean, they did try when they had their revolution in the late 18th century. They did try to absolutely de-Christianize France from like the root up and everything, and even try to like rename all the anything that might have had like any sort of roots in Christianity or Catholicism. Well, Catholicism is Christianity or anything, but I don't know if that completely went through. But it is true that as far as like separation of church and state goes, France has basically got it nailed down as hard as as hard as it goes. But I mean, but that's well, we're like rambling a bit.
No, but it
Only
all
speak because
pertains
it's
to
quite.
censorship.
I mean, I'm only just what I'm only just saying this as an envious British person who lives in a country that doesn't have a separation of church and state and would very much like to have one.
Yeah, that. While it's fair to say a lot of British people statistically don't go to Sunday service, I mean, I'm not in Sunday service right now. They still like to hold on the traditional ways and means because they think that's what their national identity is. Americans even take this to a new level. They think to be an American is to be a Protestant. And the Protestant work ethic, I could go on for hours about that. The Catholics seem to have it all nailed with their 35-hour work weeks and their respect for trade unions, but I'm seeing a lot of that crumble down with Macron's raising the retirement age to 64 instead of 62, and certain cuts to services.
Don't you mean 62 to 64?
Yes, slip of the tongue, but yes, raising it up by 2 years. Because I was there doing Le Manifestation.
They did not take kindly to that, French.
No, they got a strong a protest culture. With
stronger than
workers' rights.
Much stronger than us in Britain.
Yes.
But we digress. Okay.
But they got higher unemployment for young people, so don't get too carried away.
Okay. Well, yeah, I won't. Apart from anything else, we're talking about film here, so we get back on. Back onto topic. I mean, like I say, you saw the films in I had. Of course, one of the ones that I had was, of course, the infamous baise-moi.
Fuck me.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what it says.
Oh.
No, it's fuck me.
Oh. Yeah, that's a title I'm not too comfortable openly blurting out because I have a previous history of my father telling me to carry it for him as he was going to the bank or something, and I just felt a bit dirty having that near my reach because I certainly was not 18 at the time. You got the VHS copy. And I figured from what it looked like on the back side of the DVD, because it says frequent, very strong, language, sex, nudity, violence, all says that. I just thought, what is this dangerous movie? And I did ultimately see it when I was about 24 or something, and yeah. It's quite a nasty movie, but if you took out some of the more explicit scenes of sex and rape, it is more or less like Thelma and Louise, Woman on the Run, shooting at rapists, people who try to fuck with them, and pimps. Some of it's actually a little bit funny, like which they had to censor initially, a scene where they put a shotgun or gun up someone's ass and then shoot them. They left it uncut when they resubmitted it.
Well, that's what I'm. Well, yeah. I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't until 2013 the film was passed completely uncut here by the BBFC with an 18, obviously, but still. I mean, the I bought the thing on DVD back in 2011. So of course, all this time I've only ever watched the cut version. But even then, I was surprised by how much got through because, like, I'm still sort of thinking, well, 18 is just regular adult films that suitable for adults, but R18 is porn. But like, oh god, you're actually showing actual full-on pornographic pornographic scenes and everything with actual showing penetration, which you didn't think you could show in an 18-rated film, but apparently you can. And of course, the two main stars are actually, well, I say are, one of them were, because R.I.P. I think it was Karen Lacombe, unfortunately commits suicide. But yeah, they were both porn stars.
Was one of their names like Virginia or Virginie Trine? Or, no, Coralie Trine. Because I remember
Yeah, the one
I've
was
seen her book at one of these sort of like sex shops that was in France. It was called Passage du Désir, and it had her name or something like that. And I was like, hey, that's the baise-moi actrice. She's doing a book on how to do like Kama Sutra or something like that. But yes, I wonder how a movie like that would have been able to be pitched through the producers and stuff. I mean, the movie got a lot of controversy in France, from what I was told, with Classement X being trying to pass through, but I think they lowered it to 16 on an appeal because I think they, if they got the Classement X, they would have had to pay a certain tax that they would not have been able to play in certain cinemas, which I find that a bit hard to believe, really. I may be wrong on some of these facts because English to French translation, and then also that happened a little bit, although on a milder level, with Gaspar Noé's Love, the 3D porno that said, okay, we'll pass it at interdit en moins de 16 ans or 16, but they bumped it up to 18 ans or 18 on an appeal, and probably from some social pressure coming through promouvoir. So we would like to think that France is very libertine and you can show people fucking on the grass and talking about wine, Gauguin, while smoking cigarettes. It's all black and white, but there are social conservative strains that do exist. I mean, Sausage probably got a 12 there, so that's a giveaway.
Yeah, well, loads of films though got a 12 ever. 50 Shades of Grey got a 12. I think some 12, and I think like Die Hard was rated too public or something. That's just weird. It's worth bringing up that while we're talking about ratings, unlike most countries, France only has a 4-tier rating system. But they don't have a PG equivalent.
No, the PG is more or less consolidated under the guise of the word avertissement, which is pretty much like an advisory for parents with smaller children. It's very common with some of the more heavier superhero films. I think the Suicide Squad got it, as well as the other Suicide Squad film that had Jared Leto in it. 50 Shades Darker was re-rated from 12 to avertissement. And then the recent NC-17 film Passages, which will be coming out on the 1st of September in the United Kingdom by Mubi, that was avertissement. So,
Christ.
and Gone Girl, I think, was even too, and T2 Train Spotting. So I kind of get where you are, but on the surface, it does look very jarring for us English people who, we're told you can only see this film when you're 18, son. But go across the border, especially if you know the language, you can watch as young as 6. Which I wouldn't
It is
recommend
kind of,
taking a 6-year-old to see T2 Train Spotting.
yeah, I wouldn't, well, no, nor would I. Yeah, it's just, also I want to bring up that while we talk about like France's more liberal attitudes, it is worth bringing up that their 12 rating is, and I think it is currently the only one that still is, completely fully restricted. As in, parents can't take their kids under that age to see the movies with that rating.
You are correct. In the cinema and in stores like FNAC, Nope. You must be 12 in order to come here, otherwise you will be turned away. You can see Mignon if you like. We will play Mignon for you. Okay, that was a bit stereotypical, but you get my drift. Unlike in the US, where if you wanted to, you could take a film that, let's say, Evil Dead Rise, which is restricted to 16 and up in France. But you could bring a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old if you wanted to in America to go see Evil Dead Rise, as long as you with a parent. But why would you? So I get what you mean.
It's weird. It is kind of weird, everything. I mean, while I do agree with the rights of parents to take their kids, choose what they can go take their kids to, I do sort of wonder if maybe just allowing if kids can just go with their parents, maybe it does make the age ratings a bit meaningless. But I suppose that at least it gives some sort of restrictions because in some countries like Spain and Belgium, the age ratings are just purely advisory or cautionary, like America's PG-13 or Australia's M. I mean, a 10-year-old can go see a film of any age rating unaccompanied.
Okay, that's just bizarre. I didn't even know that was even possible in Espanol or Belgium. Hmm. So I thought with ratings like that, particularly with Spain's 18, the 18 rating there, they probably wouldn't want to make it legally binding, or maybe they reserve that for ICSA, which is more or less for the more extreme type of movies or pornography. I know
Oh yeah,
Saw.
that one's fully restricted and everything, but that's again porn stuff. I mean, like anything, the ratings that are released for cinematic movies are all completely advisory. Again, don't take my
Hmm.
word for it. Go into Wikipedia and type in motion picture content rating system, and it'll tell you whatever about them all.
Oh, I've been on that page many times.
Well, then we should know what I'm on about then.
Well, I'm probably going to lose my credentials for doing this podcast. I was mistaken, but I'll take your word for it. It's because I haven't been
I
to
wish people
Spain
would
in a
do
long
that.
time. Anyways, I'll try to reel it back in for everyone. But yes, in France, they're legally binding, or they're probably a little less so than in the UK. But yes, it does appear that way. So if you do want to go take your children to go see John Wick Chapter 4, you must be 12. Or Sausage Party, you must be 12. But at the house, probably a different story. There's probably instances of, well, actually, I've heard about instances of films that were given higher ratings or lower ratings, but they bumped it up to like 10 or 12 plus for television. I know that's what happened. I think there was a Sean Bean movie that I saw one time. It was like on TF1, and it had like a little logo that said, uh, 10, 10, and it was on superimposed on the screen the whole time to let you know this is not recommended for persons in the den.
I mean, well, I mean,
Yeah, in France they make it very clear on the TV that this is 10. Even in the US they don't do that. They usually have a little logo that says TVMA or TV14, and then it sort of disappears 5 or 10 seconds later. And in the UK we don't even have a TV rating system one bit.
eh, we just
It's
got with
all
9 o'clock watershed, and that's it. I will say to
exactly.
us, I mean, I've always been chided at Britain for its lack of liberal attitudes, but fair play to us. We've got that going for us.
Exactly there. I mean, but there are certain things you can't show on British TV. I know hardcore pornography is nope. I'm sure
Oh,
in France after like 10 or 11, sort of anything goes. I mean, this is the country that brought us
yeah.
love and
Well,
antichrist. Well,
well, again, and Spain allows it as well. They allow blue movies to be on after 10 or something like that. But no, in Britain, the best you could have was Friday night on Channel 5. Don't know if you're old enough to remember, but boy, I am.
Yeah, I didn't have that luxury, I'm afraid. I was still, a young child. I wasn't even 10 back in 1999. So, yeah, I missed out on a lot of stuff, but that's another story there. But yes,
It doesn't really make much odds nowadays anyway. Porn is freely available on the internet. If you're looking for something to beat your meat to, you've got everything we need completely covered. So it's a bit of a moot point by this right now.
that is true, I'm afraid. Although I do think it cheapens the experience and some of the stuff that you get on these websites. And I hope my mother is not hearing me talk about this. It's really disgusting. At least in France, the sexual culture there, because and I hope my family does not hear me talk about it. So I actually went to a sex shop to see and kind of get a vibe of what it was like, what it was about. They actually had a room where you could watch like these dirty movies downstairs. Only €7, about £6, £5.80 or something. I thought, oh my, I wasn't quite used to that really. But then again, I didn't feel like I was being penalized for it. Had I done that in America and even England, I would have felt like I was a criminal. Just even trying to see, oh, there's a dildo. Oh, they're showing two men doing it, or a white woman sucking a black man off, or something. No, I guess it's probably because of the historical views about. Although I've heard in recent years with French culture that's been changing a bit. They've now passed laws to stop people committing incest. They've raised the age of consent, which I think is a good thing. And
Probably. I mean, I don't. What they raised it to? Actually, did they even? I don't know if they even had official age of consent. I mean, I read somewhere it was like, God, this is going to be a little bad, but I'd heard that it was like 15 as opposed to Britain's 16. But another time I heard that they didn't actually officially have an age of consent, which is a bit weird. So what did they raise it to?
well, I might be wrong on this, but I heard they raised it to 15.
Or maybe,
Which on the fairness, it is still low. I mean, if it was 18, I would have been a bit more comfortable. I think that's just the uniform standard. But France, I guess, they already know young people are already sort of hormonally challenged, so they thought, all right, let them have it, but we need to look responsible just for our voters and also a global cultural change that were changing. A lot of these policies that were implemented have been over the past 10 years. They actually banned prostitution there. And there was a time where you could go to brothels and stuff and try and get your cock sucked. But they've tightened that a lot more to where more French people now have to go to Deutschland or Germany just so they can get their willy wet, and probably España. And
Netherlands.
the Balance ton porc, which is their version of Me Too, that sort of hit a bit of a wave to where certain French celebrities, including Gérard Depardieu, can no longer have a life in France. And he's already facing legal challenges due to tax evasion and rape, sexual assault allegations, and also being a Putin lover. That guy's damaged goods. A lot of people love Gérard Depardieu because of Jean de Florette and many other films.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I watched oh no, he wasn't in all. Because the one French film live action French film I watched recently, and it was ties into what I said earlier, was the latest Asterix films, Asterix and Middle Kingdom. But I don't think he was in that one. He was played Obelix in most of previous
Yeah,
in most of the previous ones, but he wasn't in this one. Probably for this reason, to be honest.
yeah, he's facing quite a bit of legal issues on his end. So he's damaged goods, just like Nicolas Sarkozy is, because he's doing time for corruption charges. He's on house arrest. And weirdly enough, when Roman
Let's know
Polanski
some.
won a César,
I know some countries hold their leaders accountable.
Well, we can only hope and pray. But I was told by a left-wing French person, I will not name her name, that France is a little bit behind the times when it comes to sort of recognition of sort of global trends, particularly when it comes to women's rights. But then again, I put two and two together, and it sort of makes a little bit of sense here because they were late in the game when it came to women's suffrage. It's very much a male-dominated culture, but you wouldn't know it really from all the
Yeah, they
gorgeous
didn't.
women with the berets with bobbed hair smoking
Hmm.
cigarettes.
Yeah, it's not like you tend to think of France being quite at the forefront of these progressive issues, along with Britain, America, and Sweden. But of course, France didn't give women the right to vote until the 1940s. It's weird because they've been at the forefront of a lot of other things. I mean, as we mentioned, I mean, when they decriminalized homosexuality back in 1791, and pretty much when their revolution happened, and they pretty much at the same time also abolished slavery. Yes, they reinstituted it under Napoleon, and they took it until 1848 to abolish it again. 15 years after we had done that, but still, 17 years before America did. So I mean, but I mean, at least they were ahead of the curve on those sort of things, as well as like, you know, getting down the separation of church and state. And in fact, if you actually read that Universal Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen, or whatever it was called, that was written back in 1989, 2 years before America wrote its constitution. It was fucking radical. And we're much more forward thinking than the American one was, because it actually did, as I mentioned, advocate the abolition of slavery.
Well, they've had a lot of high and heavy thinkers and philosophers at the time that were part of the Enlightenment movement, intellectuals. France is a sort of breeding ground for these types of people who have these quite radical opinions, and that sort of bubble thrives. And it did influence to some extent, even before America had their own version. France's how do I put it? How do I put it this way? Diplomatic policies did influence the U.S. government. I think partly it's because Benjamin Franklin used to visit there quite a few times, more or less as like a diplomat or an envoy. And he spoke the language quite well. So it's sort of picking and choosing from how you turn it. So I kind of get that, but I'm seeing it more or less from a contemporary perspective, and I'm seeing some of those fragments of the structure changing quite rapidly as a result of globalization, immigration, and different cultural and demographics that are putting France at a bit of a disadvantage, really. And I'm probably not the only one to notice or say this. I was just about to say on the women's rights end of things, Roman Polanski, and that's a four-letter word in this podcast, was won a César and was recognized after he did a film that was called J'accuse, an officer and a spy. I think it was for the English market. And there were several people, including Céline Chama and Adèle Hamel, I believe, who walked out at the César out of protest because they recognized that bastard.
Well, I'm
And
not
that
so
happened
surprised considering what
after
he
the
did.
Me Too or
Yeah, that
Balance
is.
Enfant.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird that people would hold a whatever post that guy. I mean, oh Christ, yes, fucking sick what he did. I just suddenly thought of another reason because you're talking about how France can be ahead or behind at times. Of course, in America, one of the most contentious issues of debate right now is, of course, whether or not they should abolish their electoral college, especially after the 2016 election where Trump won in spite of Hillary getting 3 million more votes. And of course, yeah, I'm taking you're aware of all this.
Oh, I am. Oh,
Yeah, and of course, in France, they abolished their electoral college, and I think in the 1960s. I mean, while they have a presidential system like America does, where the president is the head of the country, you can't win the election there and get less votes. You can only get you have to win the popular vote in order to win the election.
on on our end, France has the upper hand on that. As far as the electoral system is concerned, they don't really operate on the first past the post, winner takes all system that we probably take for granted. US and probably UK, but I know UK it's a parliamentary system.
I think their parliament still does work on first past the post, of what I've read, unlike the rest of the ones on continental Europe, which do use proportional representation. But as I've said, I mean, whereas like every other country in Europe uses a parliamentary system, France is using presidential system. The president actually is their leader, not just the figurehead. To be honest, I don't even know what French prime minister even does, because like I remember, but of course, the last two elections, I mean, Macron was running against Marine Le Pen and everything, and of course, people weren't worrying that this pretty much this right-wing fascist type like Trump could win in France as well. But of course, yeah, again, because like popular vote mattered, everyone who would be affected by Le Pen's policies just voted against her for her opponent. So of course, she got absolutely dragged. I mean, both the elections she ran in, as well as what her father ran in 2002, are the biggest landslides in all French electoral history.
I mean, there is that curse of the Le Pen dynasty, where if their name pops up, the mainstream public will vote against them, thinking, oh, they're going to turn into some sort of Vichy Republic type state when they want to deport Jews and Muslims or impose some sort of right-wing caliphate. Now, a lot of that's going to probably change, and I have a weird aching feeling if she did run again, she will win. They will win more seats, or at least her and Les Républicains, which is the right-wing party there, because they can capitalize on the recent Noël protests, which I would argue have certainly made France more fractured than the Gilets jaunes or the Loi 49.3 or 49.3 reform that raised up to 64. I think a large part of it is because the Noël protests were racialized. The Gilets jaunes protests were more economic fears and concerns. And one thing that Marine Le Pen has done that Trump hasn't done, and I'm sorry to say this for anyone who's left-wing, is that she managed to tap into working class sentiment on economic issues a lot better than Trump did.
But Trump did that in 2016. That's why they reckon he won the election, because he he tapped into the opposition to neoliberalism, which Hillary Clinton represented, and that's why he won the Rust Belt in 2016. Of course, by 2020, there was nothing left for him to actually offer them because he'd fucked him over mainly with his handling of COVID. Yeah, so that's why he lost. But yeah, I mean, these right-wing populists, it's like with Brexit here. I mean, these right-wing populists came around, and of course, I was always saying this. Well, I mean, I'm not getting too political, but I was saying it's probably because the left wing wasn't offering a populist alternative. I mean, in America, they had Bernie, and he got shafted. In France, they've got Jean-Luc Mélenchon, but he can. But again, they got shafted, and we did try it with Corbyn here, but of course, it didn't help him. But of course, he happened during Brexit, and a lot of the Remainers didn't really think he was on their side, so that didn't work out.
Don't get me started on the whole anti-Semitism allegations that he received.
I try not. I try not to. I mean, again, we are sort of like getting off topic because I wanted to talk about, in terms of movies, I want to talk about that new wave of French extremity, or new French extremity that came about.
No, you're talking about movies like Attention and Frontière. I actually got Frontière on DVD. £1 checks. But yes, let's go on, get started.
Oh,
but yeah,
Frontiers. Oh, I got that one.
It's because I know we talked about Noël and the racial violence in France. That movie, like Bonjour très or La Haine, taps into a certain anger that I think France does not want to open, because it deals essentially with three Algerian kids who left like the banlieues because there's a sort of police state going on there and they're being targeted, and they go into the sort of the sticks and they find a neo-Nazi family that's living
I
out,
do remember that one actually.
and they're being terrorized or sort of hung up as like meat. And looking at that film again in recent years, that movie's probably a little too close on the needle, particularly for a lot of French people. I'm sure they probably would ban it from cinemas on political grounds, like they did with La Bataille d'Alger, the Battle of Algiers. Sorry, I had to rant off.
I mean, they didn't. Well, they didn't. They didn't buy it. I did own that one on DVD. I think I've owned it. I know I've seen it, but I mean, I can't seem to find it in my DVD collection. But I know I have seen it, and I might have blogged it. I know, but it is a. Yeah, that was a very brutal film. And of course, most of these movies, while they're getting, while they are getting past uncut over here by the BBFC, which goes to show how far they've come. Well, I mean, they would be uncut in America if they would just happily release things with NC-17 rating, but they won't because reasons. So yeah, they are getting into the NC-17 rating, and of course, that makes me feel so embarrassed. France is making all these films which Americans are rated NC-17, and what's Britain done? We've done Shame and Evil Aliens. It's like, was it Shame or Shameless? We did, yeah, Shame and Evil Aliens. It's like those are the two films we've done that were I managed to get NC-17 rates. I was thinking, Christ, Britain, make more of an effort. Like they're
Well,
actually like
well, they did
yeah,
another movie that was a prison drama during World War II called Bent. That was NC-17, but it was uncut in the UK at 18. That had Clive Owen, weirdly enough. Film for production. Young Adam, that's Scottish. That got an NC-17 because of one scene of explicit sexual content. My goodness. Grow up, America.
Oh, okay then. Well, if it's Scottish, it's from the UK, so it counts as British. And that's well, that's what's important then, because what I want to make sure is that Britain can actually get some films rated NC-17 because that'll show how cool and badass they are. But France is beating us on this one and beating us quite badly. So Britain, you got to pick up the pace, otherwise you're going to look like a bunch of little girls. Sorry to sound sexist and ageist.
Well, I don't expect Britain to make a film as violent as, let's say, The Raid 2 or even Saw 3, or movies sexually explicit as like Love. But then again, you know, Britain brought us 9 songs. That was pornographic. And they
we did that one?
Yeah. Well,
whoa,
one of the actresses is American, but it was made by Michael Winterbottom. They've done 24-Hour Party People and The Trip, which is a BBC TV show. And that's quite dirty. That's the first movie I ever saw that had explicit sex scenes.
Well, hold on a second. I'm just looking it up as one on IMDb. 9 songs. Oh, yeah. It is a British film. Unrated edited version of DVD music plays sex scene, but it's still too graphic for an R rating. Oh, wicked. That does mean it's rated NC-17. Oh, cool. We got another one. Belton. Sorry, it's just
playing tallying games right here. But no, you know, Britain can come up with surprises.
Well, Mark, the NC-17 should be seen as a badge of honor, not a scarlet letter.
Well, tell that to people like Joan Graves and Dan Glickman and the company at MPAA. They'll never do that. NATO, not Jens Stoltenberg NATO. We're talking about the National Association of Theatre Owners.
I know
They'll
who they
never
are.
let that happen. For economic reasons more than anything.
That's weird, because apparently they were a reason why the MPAA under Jack Valenti made the original X rating. Originally, he just made G, M, and R, and that was it. And then the intention that parent can choose what he can take their kids to see, and that NATO organization, National Association of Theatre or National Association of Theatre Owners, said, we're going to need something that can restrict kids so we don't get shit from our local councils. Said, all right, I'll put an X rating on there, and but I won't trademark it, so I'll let any filmmaker just self-apply it, and we all know where that went. And I mentioned on the other one, could you imagine if he did trademark it so the porn industry couldn't jump on it, and so cinemas, it couldn't be associated with porn, so cinemas would just happily show it, films with the rating. Could you imagine in an alternative timeline they did do that?
I think my sigh is the giveaway of how I feel about that, because so many great movies could have been legitimized as a result. Maybe you might be able to even see a film like that in your local library. I mean, I was lucky to get Showgirls at the library that was near where I lived in California. But try doing that in Florida or Arkansas. You're probably not so lucky. So yeah, also a lot of it's also a community standards issue, because prior to lawsuits like Miller v. California, certain territories and organizations could decide whether or not to screen a film on the basis of its content. This is how a film like Carnal Knowledge, which got an R rating, got in a little bit of trouble because they found some of the language and sexual material to be inappropriate for community standards. So France doesn't quite have this problem. It's all sort of France, as far as government policy is concerned, it's very, my apologies, it's very centralized, which can also lend a few problems of its own, because you'll sometimes will get films that have stuff in it that will not appeal to people from the bonulars because it's haram. Show people eating pork or drinking and explicit sexual material that usually people from Muslim countries don't want to see. And then films that might have probably too much violence and political material that might be too challenging for the more conservative factions of French society, like La Bataille d'Alger or the Battle of Algiers, which I think they banned for a certain number of years before they could let it pass through, because tensions between France and Algeria were still quite rife. I think this was a result of the Charles de Gaulle government at the time. I like to say France has a proud history of its protesting population, but the French government can crack down with a heavy hand. I mean, May 1968 was a period of time where students fought to protest against the current state of things, promote perhaps more socialism, and they got beaten in the head for it. They got spat
Not just in
on.
France, though, but it happened all over the place. I mean, let's face it. I mean, there's always going to. I mean, there was a lot of protests back in '68, but we've seen a lot of protests in mine. I mean, I think the time we're living in has just been just as transgressive as the '60s ever were. And I've just looked up that Battle of Algiers. Yeah, it was banned until '71. Now it's tout public.
I know, quite a leap, because I was at the Bibliothèque in Nice, and they had it on display, and I thought, I don't think I should borrow this from the library, because they might think I'm one of those evil Muslim sympathizers who hates French values.
Oh, don't be such a coward. Fuck me, man.
Well, I mean,
I don't want to, I don't want to, like, don't take that too wrong. That's kind of tongue in cheek, but I mean, I do this. I mean, sometimes granted, I can be a bit of an edgelord at times, and when I get into stuff like this, I sort of hope they think stuff like that about me, but they probably don't. Just roll my eyes and see me as someone trying to seek attention. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about this. I mean, we live in a very open time, Mark. People just aren't bothered by that stuff anymore. I mean, I know we've got stuff like Ron DeSantis in Florida. Well, I'm convinced half that shit's just theatre. Of anything that could be my white, cisgender, heterosexual man privilege speaking. It's like this. I just only had a thought, Marcus. Have you seen the film Martyrs?
That's one of the few nouvelles extrêmité français I've not seen. I've only seen Frontière and Attention and Irréversible. That's Gaspar Noé. But Martyr, I've heard, is extremely violent to where some people passed out.
I've not seen it either. I mean, I've been meaning to see it. I've not seen Irreversible. I kind of wouldn't mind watching it because it's got Monica Bellucci in, isn't I? So fancy her.
Well, you'll have to go to the doctor for post-traumatic stress disorder because it's got a 9-minute rape scene, which led
I've
to
heard
people
about that.
walking out and passing out at Cannes as a result of. Oh, don't watch it; it's horrible.
Yeah, I've Well, anyway, because I'm looking at a lot of the ones, and of course, I haven't seen Martyrs, haven't seen Shaitan, but of course, I've seen there's Them or Ils, which I saw once, but I saw it anyway. Um, I thought that was I thought that was okay-ish. Didn't think too much about it. Obviously, we mentioned High Tension or Switchblade Romance, as it's known over here. Uh, Saw that, and that is a fucking brutal film, and I loved it. I mean, the twist makes no sense to anyone who's seen it because fucking no, yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, I've seen Frontiers and everything. So yeah, I've seen a shit. I've seen my fair few of these French stream films. I think it's quite telling of like the French attitude towards movies, though, that they can just happily make these incredibly brutal and transgressive movies that just don't get made pretty much anywhere else. I mean, they don't get made in the Anglosphere, or at least they don't seem to. I mean, I know we look at films like Saw and Hostel, but these films put those films to shame. It's a bit like, I suppose, Italy in the 1960s, when they started making all those spaghetti westerns.
Oh
And
yes,
because Italian cinema wasn't heavily regulated like Britain and America, because America still had its highly puritanical Hays Code, which just crushed any form of expression. Uh, Britain's BBFC were still horrendously just restrictive. I mean, the fact that Rebel Without a Cause had to be cut just to get an X rating was so bollocks. And of course, Italian cinema just fucking didn't. So it's why the likes of Sergio Leone were able to make these boundary pushing, transgressive Western films, which made the old Western films, a la John Wayne, look so old hat. Needless to say, oh boy, they had troubles in over here, and I think in America as well. The Dollars trilogy all suffered with cuts just to get their X ratings. Of now they're all completely uncut and with 15s, but the point still stands.
my experience with cinema italiano is not very good as far as like French cinema is concerned, but I do. Oh, okay, I'll rewind it a little bit. I am aware they do have a much more sort of outrageous history of certain titles, particularly with stuff like Salo. Um, some of the prison camp and sexploitation films that were quite popular back in the day, and then Tinto Brass stuff like Caligula and Paprika. Uh, you can always tell it's a Tinto Brass movie because it shows a woman with her arse bared out on the DVD cover, which I didn't know that you could sell porn movies like that at HMV. That was always the question that was raised on my mind when I saw the DVD covers because I was the weird fucker who was always browsing the world cinema and anime sections. I certainly shouldn't have been seeing certain titles' DVD covers when I was 12, but that's another story.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, fair enough then. Uh, I mean, we like what we like. I mean, there's no point being too guilty about it, providing it's not providing there's certain things that you have to feel guilty. But if it's not child porn, don't worry about it. Or a snuff film. Because on Netflix, there's that TV show called Whack Fu or Wake Fu. Have you seen that?
Is it anime style? Because I know France likes
Kinda.
to do anime style cartoons, even though it's not Japanese, like Miraculous and Totally Spies.
Uh, well, it is anime style. Yeah, I've only watched the first episode. I probably should watch a bit more. It is quite cool. But yeah, I just wonder if you've watched that. I mean,
Well,
don't
you've
know much to say
probably
about it, but he's seen one
seen
episode.
Arcane. That's
I was about to bring
français.
that up. Yeah, I was about to bring that up as well. I didn't know that was French. I mean, um, No, I did watch that. I thought that was pretty good. I love the animation style. That animation style is becoming quite ubiquitous nowadays with the Spider-Man films and the Spider-Verse films and that Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem that's just recently come out, which is awesome. Not as awesome as Across the Spider-Verse, but still. So I hope more films will be released in that style. And I'm just waiting for the first adult animated film to be in that style.
They
That'll be quite
actually
fun.
already have. It's
Are
on
they?
Netflix. It's a Kid Cudi movie that's called Intergalactic, and it's in that sort of into the universe arcane style of things. It's about like an
Now
hour
I
and
have to
30
look it up.
minutes. It's like a love story that's adult animation. I'm sure you'll like it. I didn't connect with it that well because
Oh,
that animation style is a
Intergalactic.
little distracting visually for me because it looks like they're trying to emulate a comic book style.
That's the point of it.
Yeah, that's probably why I didn't connect with it because I'm not a comic book person. Uh, I actually like manga stuff more than I like comic books, in case anyone asks. But I'll wind it back for everyone out there. But because I know dessin animé is very popular in France, whether it's American or Japanese or French or Belgian, you're probably aware of their video game industry as well. Ubisoft, that's one of the big names.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. I mean, Ubisoft, they have produced quite a lot of video games in recent France. I mean, they did that recent Prey that came out, but yeah, fucking Ubisoft is most most famous or infamous, judging by how the the a lot of the games they release and how they just release it almost unfinished.
Because
But
my
yeah,
knowledge of Ubisoft is mainly through one or two things. Rayman, the Rabid Rabbits, which I assume, oh, that's what French people love. They love the Raving Rabbit, and they give it to Pierre and Francois for their birthday, anniversaire. But there was a film that was called Elle. It was by Paul Verhoeven, of all things. But it's not Dutch, and it's not an American movie. It's complètement en français. It's a horrible, disturbing movie about rape. But there was a really bizarre scene, and this, mind you, is rated R uncut, 18 uncut, and it's got sort of tentacle rape involving video game visuals of a monster that's pulling out something that's sort of tentacle shaped, like a hentai, but it's penetrating into a sort of video game looking woman. It goes on for a while, and they're sort of dissecting this on the screen as to how they can do this or do that. It's really bizarre. Have you seen Elle? Please
no,
don't.
I haven't. I mean, there's a lot of these films I haven't actually seen. So I mean, yeah. Uh, well, now I'm intrigued.
Well,
Of
I
course.
thought to say that for you because I know you're a video game guy a lot more than I am, and I'll let you sort of think. And also, for an 18 film, you can show that sort of stuff. But I did not expect to see sexual assault like in the first minute of the film starting. That was not a pleasant experience. It was. It's only a strong 18. If it came under Furman, they probably would have had to cut and censor a few things.
Bizarre because I'm looking at its ratings on IMDb, and it's only got an R rating in America, and it's MA 15 plus in Australia. So I'm quite surprised it's getting away with it. You say it's a strong 18, but hey ho, well,
Well,
so right.
that's just me because I know how strict the BBFC are when it comes to rape scenes. But then again, if it's a foreign film, I'm guessing they're going to be a little bit more sort of toeing the line a little bit because they assume class-wise, only university-educated people from London are going to be seeing movies like this and stroking their beard while watching it, thinking, "Oh, how cultured I am." I mean, look at how they viewed the Belgian film en français called C'est arrivé près de chez vous or Man Bites Dog from the great distributor Tartan. That was past 18 uncut and deferment, and that really had quite a full-on scene of a man assaulting a woman. You see nudity, and then after the fact, she's disemboweled, and there's dead bodies everywhere. NC-17 as well in the US.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up now. I mean, yeah, that is surprising. It managed to get through completely uncut, and by freaking uncut by foot and deferment. But yeah, it must have been because, well, I mean, just knowing what he was like. Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah,
in Australia,
certain things did.
in Australia, the uncut version was refused classification due to sexual violence. Well, that was that's a bit
Yeah, that's unheard of, really. I mean, well, actually, I take that back. Human Centipede 2 and that film from Eastern Europe, which we'll never talk about on this channel, although we did,
I know which one
censored in
you're on about.
Australia or banned in Australia or censored heavily in Australia a lot more than it was in the UK.
Well, that's I don't know if I find that surprising or not, considering it does have quite a freaking reputation for censorship, Australia, and especially with video games. Oh, of course, that's another. In terms of the video game, that's the one I suddenly remembered. Quantic Dream by David Cage.
I don't know that one, I'm afraid.
It's
Did
a
it get like
video.
a...
It's a video game company. Founded by David Cage, and of course he's made all these sort of interactive movies type games. Mostly it's Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human and Beyond Two Souls. He actually got William Defoe and well, then Ellen Page, but now Elliot Page, to feature in that video game. So that was quite a yeah. So that's quite a thing. He's getting quite a lot of backlash for being a bit pretentious and not quite as good as he likes to think he is. But I quite enjoy his video games.
Sorry if I
But
overheard someone speaking from the background, because I heard Willem Dafoe and Elliot Page. Are you referring to The Last of Us? Because that's
no, no, no,
Ubisoft.
no. It's not Ubisoft. It's Naughty Dog. But no, it's called Beyond Two Soul.
Oh, I remember that one. I think that was like on PS3 or 4. Because I
Right,
remember
yeah,
seeing a lot of ads for it at the cinema. Oh, buy this game, PlayStation. Ding! The things you pick up every once in a while. I can't really speak to on sort of censorship grounds on something like that. But even though France is very relaxed as far as their film ratings are concerned, it appears that way. They are still quite strict on video games. I mean,
they are
Grand
that
Theft
much.
Auto, they follow the PEGI system, and all these
Yeah,
types of
well,
games are
most
18.
most stuff, most countries in Europe do. Just Germany doesn't. I think it's because they got their own issues to look at, and of course, if they leave it to Peggy, a lot of these issues will slip through, like depictions of Nazi symbols. But yeah, I mean, they all deal with the Peggy system, and of course, I think Beyond Two Souls was slightly edited over here to get a 16 rather than an 18 from Peggy,
Oh,
at least from what I've read.
I didn't even know that was possible. I only thought they did that with like the South Park Stick of Truth, because they had
Well,
to
it's a thing.
tone it down for Australia and New Zealand.
What's a thing though? I mean, from what I hear, they're saying the South Park Stick of Truth. They say that the addition Parker and Stone was saying, oh well, they had to release it so cut it to get it released at all. But like Peggy said, no, we would have given you an 18 with the whole thing completely uncut. Just like clearly Ubisoft were aiming for a 16 rating, so he made those edits thinking it would get it down to a 16 rating. It didn't work, but they still left those edits in, so that's just stupid. But uh, neither. But anyway, yeah, that's neither here nor there. No, but that's just something I remember about. Because I just suddenly forgot about like that David Cage's contributions to video gaming, and of course, yeah, France has been contributing a lot to video games in recent years. I mean, I remember playing Blood Bowl, which was done by the Cyanide publishers. Of course, they're French as well, and that's those are quite good ones. I mean, all the dialogue is either done by American. Actually, no, they aren't Americans. Probably done by Canadians, actually, or British people. Also, in terms of movies, the one I wanted to talk about earlier, but I never got around to mentioning it. Have you seen Taken?
Now that one's a weird one because I remember I was in Calais and it came out like in '08, and then a year later it would have its US release, which I thought that was a bit jarring because the movie's in English anyways. And then the fact it was PG-13 stateside, despite being a movie about prostitution, sex trafficking, torture, and vigilantism, and it was 12 in France. This was really jarring. It didn't make quite a lot of sense to me. And I remember seeing it in the cinema. I just thought, this movie sucks. But go on.
Wait,
you were saying.
Wait, where did you see it? Where did you see it at the cinema?
I saw it in England.
All right, okay.
With the 15.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. I thought you were saying in America, because for its PG-13 rating in America, it was heavily cut. Heavily cut. I mean, and for a 15 rating here, it was also cut, albeit not as extensively. I mean, it's just the torture scene where he electrocutes that guy that was cut down in Britain for its 15 rating. Of course, in America for a PG-13 rating, they cut shit tons out and everything. Yeah, I think in most other countries it was actually uncut. It's just that Britain and America had to be slightly toned down. Well, slightly toned down in Britain, excessively toned down in America. But that film should not have been PG-13. That should have been released with an R rating, just for its tone in general. There's
Exactly.
what they were thinking, I don't know.
I wanted the same thing as you. Because when I saw that, I didn't quite understand really, but I'm guessing, they try to chase for the almighty dollar. I want the dollar, and like you said, from a bit of an early mention about they got the actors who are from Canada and stuff. For a country that hates Anglophones so much, they sure want to cow down economically to Anglophones.
Where they get the
And
money?
use
Where they get the money from?
like Naughty Dog or Burger King, Utako. What? Because I was in Nice and I saw there was quite a few signs, or they would name some of the food stuff in English. That was a bit jarring, really, because I know how nationalistic French people can be. If it's English, it is evil.
Well, I mean, they can be a bit like that, yeah. I mean, I'm just going. Of course, right now I'm on Wikipedia. I'm going through Luc Besson's filmography, and
well, a cinquième élément, Fifth Element, that was PG. I remember for a long time, despite having quite a bit of nudity and violence and several other questionable scenes.
Surprised like hell that got away with that freaking PG rating. I mean, needless to say, it's been bumped up to a 12. I mean, I just get them on its IMDb page. Yeah, I don't know. What's a PG rating in Australia? I thought it might be an M, like Mission Impossible was. But
Men in Black got an M rating in Australia. So I guess I don't know. That's a weird one because that Cinquième Élément, that's quite a bit of a strong title as far as PGs are concerned. Probably a bit more so than Men in Black. But then again, maybe I'm just thinking that way because it's got that nudity element and a few other bits in between. But yes, Luc Besson's catalogue is a bit of a strange one. I'm going to include Leon on this one because I know that movie has a bit of a reputation amongst Roman Polanski types and Jimmy Savile types who want to watch it because Natalie Portman is being like some sort of Lolita type character. But
gross, but yeah.
I don't know, because I don't know if you've seen it, but the film is creepy.
Well, but I mean, I've seen it. Yeah, I mean, but it does get because, like I say, she was only 13 or so. She's only 4 years older than I am. I mean,
Oh yes, well I mean,
but
you saw it, probably much earlier than I did. I saw it at university, and I don't know, that film had Taxi Driver vibes about it, but not in a good way. Even though Jean Reno is a great actor,
oh, he's brilliant,
who's involved in that,
absolutely brilliant.
who I assume, well, because I go to France quite a bit, is France's most loved actor. But weirdly enough, the most popular actor in France is Danny Boone, who doesn't really do a lot of English titles, but he does a lot of films within his own country. And he usually sets it up in Non Pas de Calais, and it's about postal workers or people controlling the Belgian border, the Franco-Belgian border. But yeah, Luc Besson is probably the most English friendly of the French filmmakers. You cannot say that about people like Godard or Truffaut,
Yeah,
Belmondo, because I know for a lot of people, French cinema is very insular. And because a lot of it's financed through tax money and special government grants and investment that circulate through the film and TV industry, that it helps to finance its own. It doesn't need outside influences to help keep it going. But the ones that generally tend to be the most popular in UK, US, generally tend to be those stupid art films that people, no offense, like Tom, who goes like film studies course, think you have to like it because they telling you to like it, like Jules Jam and Bill du Jour, anything that's got like Catherine Deneuve and Yves Montand. But for me, the favorite French films I like are usually the ones that are animated or ones that are perhaps maybe a little bit more mainstream, like Samba and We on the Déclaré, We on the Ch'ti and Micmac. Sorry, I went on a rant there.
yeah. I'm just sort of trying to process everything you've all just taken in because I mean, obviously, Luc Besson is probably the most famous outside of France and everything. I was trying to think of ones who did take in films. There was Pierre Morel and Olivia Megaton, but of course they don't know quite as much. But because
Well,
it
I
was
know
Luc
one of them
Besson.
did Bonjour le 13,
Yeah,
but
it was
yeah,
Luc Besson. He did both. Well, I mean, actually, no way. He just produced it. He didn't actually direct. Who did do that one? Oh no, Pierre Morel. He did the first one, and District 13 Automata.
I
That
think
was
they've done
by Patrick
Transporter.
Alistair. Yeah, they did Transporter as well. Of course, Luc Besson did that Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, which was the most expensive non-American film like at the time ever made. And unfortunately, I didn't really do that well. I saw a film once. I thought it was all right, but it could have been about half an hour shorter. Um, I think a scene where Clara Delevingne or whatever character gets abducted and has been rescued could have been cut out, but yeah, that's not here nor there. You're talking about in terms of uh, France's most popular actors outside of France, probably Jean Reno. I think Marianne Cotillard, I don't know how to pronounce her name, was thanks to her work with Christopher Nolan, is probably getting got a lot of traction.
I would say she's one of the most famous ones out there, especially because she's now doing a lot of sort of ads for I think Yves Saint Laurent or Lancôme. And then Léa Seydoux, she's made a bit more of a
Oh
profile.
shit!
She's on James Bond, and then she's on French Dispatch, which was Wes Anderson.
Oh, she's making a name for herself as well. I saw her first in that Robin Hood film. Of course, speaking of like historical films for actresses, it looked like in the mid to late 90s, Sophie Marceau was going to become become quite an international name, but unfortunately, she fell by the wayside a bit. Actually, pity. She was really fit.
Well, I know Juliette Binoche kind of probably took her what's the word, popularity by storm because I've seen Juliette Binoche in a lot more Hollywood films than Marceau did, particularly like Chocolat. You know, she was in Trois Couleurs Bleues, a few other films. They should probably have more films that have Charlotte Gainsbourg in it. I know, well, she's partially English because her mother was Jane Birkin, who passed away recently and is the daughter of the pervert Serge, who says, Je t'aime moi non plus. Well, yeah, I'm going to talk about music here for a second. Je t'aime moi non plus, I love you, but no more, was banned on British radio because the sexual content and the orgasm sounds. Which I'm sure
Well,
you're.
wouldn't.
Huh?
Well, I mean, probably doesn't surprise me too much.
Which I'm sure maybe your grandparents or your parents probably heard of when they were coming of age on the radio, or they got like the 7-inch or something.
They may have. I haven't really talked to them about it, so I couldn't tell you. No, I mean, I know. Yeah, I'm aware of Charlotte Gainsbourg. I forgot about her quite a bit. Oh, of course, she was in Antichrist, wasn't she? Oh boy, that was a freaking.
Which
She's
has
been a lot of laws.
Lisa annulled in France. I saw it when I was in Nice, and I felt kind of naughty. I got it from the library because it's legally speaking banned over there.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's only banned at the cinema. I don't know. I mean,
It is.
yeah, which means it's probably legal to own on video. I mean, who the fuck knows? I mean, I've seen her in those films. I mostly saw her. I remember she was in Independence Day Resurgence, which is not a great foray into Hollywood because it was shit. Yeah, so I suppose she might be had a potential to become a big name. Of course, one name I thought was going to be quite big, but never really took off was Audrey Tautou, who was in Amelie or Torto. I'm not sure how you pronounce her
Audrey
name.
Tautou. I referred to her as Tattoo for so long, but maybe that's just me. But yes, she was going to be a big star. I know she was in that movie I
The Da
cannot
Vinci
talk
Code.
about.
Yeah, so that's going to bring up, and of course, because that film's set in in France, because the book's set in France. So of course, it's in the 2000s. So of course, they'd have Jean Reno and Audrey Tautou, but to whatever you pronounce her name, and but of course, yeah, she didn't appear in any Hollywood films after that. But I think she said that she never had any interest because you look at her quotes on IMDb. She said, "I don't mind being in American films occasionally, but I don't want to be in thingy blah blah free." Which, of course, for next year after the Da Vinci Code came out, Rush Hour 3, which is set in France. So I kind of thinking that might just be exactly what she was on about.
No, but there is some truth to it because French actors aren't really popular in the global sphere of things. They like to do a lot of their projects from within. Maybe there's a bit more of a support network. I think Hollywood is more or less, if you don't make your next big hit, you're out or you're ignored or you have to do like direct to DVD videos, like Nicolas Cage does. Maybe that's from what I was told, but the only sort of actors that I'm aware of right now that are sort of trying to break it out big is like Omar Sy, who's probably the only black person people know who's from France, and I'm ashamed to say that. And he's been in like X-Men Days of Futures Past and Inferno, and he's in this show called Lupin, where he plays like a jewelry thief in Paris. That's very popular. He's got quite a profile. And then Gad Elmaleh, who does a lot of the sort of comedies. He done voiceovers for Gru from Moi Moche et Méchant, which is the French title for Despicable Me. So that's where you get. And Léa Seydoux.
You could have just called it that.
Well,
also, I just suddenly remembered. There's also Eva Green as well.
Oh yeah, I kind of forgot she was partially French, just like Emma McKay. Because of their accents, you wouldn't know it really, because they seem a bit.
Yeah, what's weird, but we're both born in French, and unlike Emma Watson, who was born in France but moved to Britain when she was 5, is it Mackay? Well, just thought it was Mackie. Anyway, she moved to Britain when she was 17, so it was like you thought she would have like sound completely and utterly all proggy, To quote Alan Partridge, where they sit around their brasseries munching onions and going, oh, ho-he, ho-he, ho-he. That's not really particularly funny, but, well, it's funny, but it's only funny because he's such a xenophobic dick. But, yeah, you'd have thought she would have more French accent, but she doesn't. I remember I read an article where she said nothing could prepare her for how much British people drink, which is, yeah, something French people always comment on. But yeah, just like those two, you wouldn't think they were French, but yeah, they are. I thought Eva Green was half British, just like Emma Mackey, but no, she's half Swedish.
So it's a bit like Isabella Rossellini. It's partially Italian,
Possibly.
partially Swedish because of Ingmar Bergman. Sorry. Ingmar Bergman and Roberta Rossellini had a daughter, and that was Isabel Rossellini, who's Italian. Most people think she is, but she's actually partially Swedish. So I kind of get where you're coming from. And then Uma Thurman, she was partially Swedish as well, but most people think of her as American. But that's sort of another story there. Or that guy who does Skinny E Media, who people think, oh, he's British. Well, he's a bit of a Yank. Have you ever heard him say the word Tuesday? Doesn't sound like Tuesday. Oh, I'm talking about me.
Yeah, well, I could go by what people's accents are, really. I mean, mind you, Elon Musk sounds American, and he's only lived there since he was 18, after going from a Springbok land, aka South Africa. So yeah, there's
But yes, and also, you have to bear in mind a lot of French actors also hail from Belgique or Belgique, Belgium, whatever you want to call it, because the market there is a lot more. And that's the funny thing. They film quite a few films up in Belgium because for tax purposes, and also they've got like a tax shelter that they can use to offset some of the costs. But yet they go to France because that's where more of the money is. It's like all these Australians looking at you, Margot Robbie, coming to Hollywood because there's more opportunity there. So yes, even in the Francophone world, there is sort of transitions and migration from within. Celine Dion, one of the most popular singers of the world. France's darling, even though she's Quebecoise. I know we haven't talked much about Quebec's cinema scene, but they're kind of quiet, really. I mean, between the two rating systems, Quebec actually uses a completely different system from the most of Canada, to where they use G, Général, 13 ans, 13, 16 ans, 16, 18 ans, 18. So it's kind of similar. But they're actually more strict.
It's similar to France in that it's only a 4-tier rating system rather than the 5 tiers that most other countries use.
That is true, but the difference is that Quebec tries to be a little bit more strict about swearing and sexual stuff than the French are. Even on violence, I know Midsommar, the great Swedish movie by Ari Aster. They filmed it in fucking Hungary because for tax purposes. They got a 16 plus in Quebec, 12 in France. And Sausage Party was like 16 in Quebec as well, but 12 in France.
So it's probably more on a level of most other movies, or at least the Anglosphere movies, I guess.
And in Belgium, like you said, they use KT and KNT, or EA. I'm a little bit confused by it because they use Dutch Flemish and then French. So we're going to use the two words for it. KT, EA, suitable all ages. KNT, ENA is 16 plus. But like you said, because it's advisory, it's kind of confusing, really. I would never take a child to go see something like It Chapter 2. Well, I'll reel that back in, like Casino Royale, which I'm probably assuming is like KT or EA. Now, that movie done a number on my head. Imagine if I brought a 10-year-old to see that. He might get a turn gay for watching the torture scene. and then you
I
get
don't
bullied at
think
school
they-
for it.
I don't think they would necessarily turn gay over it. I mean, you either are gay or you aren't. I mean, you're not going to turn gay because you saw something. But I mean, like that is it's quite a weird. Yeah, that was quite a weird film, but I don't really think much about it. Can't remember where I was going. I swear that's what I was going to say, but I can't remember what it was now.
Was it about Belgium or Quebec?
No, it's not about any of those. I guess I was just going to mention about Eva Green's filmography, because in terms of like how many films she's been in, she's in terms of like American or Anglosphere films, she's probably got the most. Well, until Emma Mackey takes over, but if she still gets counted as French, she'll probably be the most well-renowned one, because I mean, in 2014 alone, she was in 2 sequel films to films based on Frank Miller comics. She was in a second 300 film and a second Sin City film, if you remember.
Oh yes, she was. She had that weird line where she says, "I like the way it fights, then you fuck." I thought that was a bit anachronistic for a movie that's set during the Greek-Persian War.
Well, don't know
Anyways.
why. If you ever saw HBO's Rome, that's full of the swearing, loads of fucks and cunts and everything. But I digress.
Oh, God bless them. But yes, well, I won't ask about your Ava Green obsession or Emma Mackey, because it's probably, hey, you're not alone. If you've
Not
ever seen
obsession, I was
early
just thinking about
photos of Isabelle Huppert, who's one of the few ginger-haired people from France, what a bonny lass. And her daughter, Lola Hama. She's Jewish, not Arabic, but yes. Anyways, I think we're kind of pushing our luck here. We're about an hour and 41 minutes in, but I'll let you conclude if you want to have any last thoughts.
Not sure I want to go to. I mean, obviously, if we could talk about French cinema until the bloody cows come home, I think we got a lot of topic anyway. Obviously, it's worth pointing out that I think France showed the first ever theatrical film, or hosted the first ever moving picture in the world, at least according to Wikipedia.
La Frère Lumière, they sort of increased awareness of daguerreotype, which was the former word for like a cinematograph or a camera. And then Georges Méliès, who they referenced on Hugo, the Scorsese movie, he done La Voyage dans la Lune, A Voyage to the Moon. And it had the hilarious scene of a rocket on the moon's eye. So yeah, but that's what the film snobs like us and people who go to UCL or Prissy Godcadet at Cardiff University, they obsess over these types of movies because they think it'll make you feel cultured if you watch a film like that, or like Juliette Jeanne and Belle de Jour and Bout de Souffle, which is breathless. Did you, when you went to university, when you meet the film studies people, did you get that vibe from people who talk about French movies? They wear the cravat and they're all
I never met it, Mark. I never met any film studies people in my time at uni, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay, maybe that's just my experience, but they're a bit cliquey for my liking. They're the kind of people who go to Wes Anderson movies. Not a big fan of them.
Okay. Well, I mean that's fair enough then. Although I think people have studied film studies, people are able to do them. Well, because I know Doug Walker and I think Lindsay Ellis both majored in film studies. This is why they're able to make their YouTube media empire just on dissecting films. As are most other people you probably see on YouTube reviewing films, at least from what I want to know. But nonetheless, obviously, it's France's cinematic history is quite impressive. It's of course amazing they can just make these incredibly transgressive films that they have. Also done some really cool genre films, mostly like District 13 and its sequel. Yeah, I've also just been quite envious of France's political structure, where it's republic and its separation of church and state, and it's just commitment to Enlightenment values. But that's neither here nor there. And of course, I just liked how they stayed out the Iraq War, because that was pretty based of them. But other than that, there's not much else I can really say. I mean, yeah, I'll see if I can go see Passages when it comes out. If it does play on the cinemas over here, we'll see, I
playing in
guess.
Cardiff on the 23rd, I think.
Oh, interesting.
It's at the Everyman Cinema, so it's going to be a bit pricey, but if you want to see an NC-17 film on the big screen, just like Infinity Pool, I'm sure it's well worth it.
No, soon see anyway. Anyway, we'll see what's what in due time. Yeah, I guess that's kind of all I have to really talk about. I don't know if we really covered anything good. I mean, our podcasts always descend into us just rambling about shit and going off topic and weird tangents. So I don't think we actually, get to nail any particular topics or get to the crux of any issues. But it's good fun. Any sign off you want to make, Mark?
For my francophone listeners out there, désolé pour la traduction presque complètement en anglais, qui le français. Alors, France, c'est mon pays favori à l'Europe. Merci à vous pour écouter l'entretien, le podcast. À bientôt. Hopefully, all of you have a good time. Signing off.
Au revoir and à bientôt. And yeah, have a good day.